Welcome to the David the Dog Trainer podcast, episode 47. Coming up on 52 real fast.
Really fast.
All right. Josh, what's new?
See, this is the problem. We went through everything downstairs. And
We
I'm
did.
like,
We went through everything that's new.
And I even said, I was like, why did we do that? We always say good things down there. But had a great Thanksgiving. Went to 2 Thanksgivings. So I ate entirely too much. Got a bunch of new quotes. December's going to round out the year on a pretty busy note, so that feels great for me.
Ending strong. Is this your first official year where you will essentially have just been, like, self-employed?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Here's my question for you. Mm-hmm. How you doing your taxes? You doing them with somebody? You doing them yourself? How you handling that?
With somebody. Yeah.
How's that been?
It was good.
How's first year filing your own taxes been?
It's been fine. Like
Ain't no return coming this year.
Hopefully, maybe. I've been keeping extra back, so I've been keeping 30+% back. So I'm hoping.
Like you've been keeping it aside. Is that what you're saying? Oh, yeah. I mean, that's still not a return, though.
Yeah, no, it's not.
That just means that you did it right. That just means you planned accordingly to be able to pay it at the end of the year.
What I'm hoping is that I saved too much. That's the thing. And then hopefully all my deductions. But I'm in the process actually right now of, putting everything in QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you talk to Taylor yet?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
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 She helped you out a little bit?
Yeah, she helped me out a lot, actually, but she's probably tired of me, like, questioning her, like, hey, should I get this version, or do I really need this one, Yeah. It's like, basically, since I don't have any employees, I can do the simplest version. Sure. She's like, you don't need any of that other shit. So,
yeah.
No, it's last year, so I started the company technically, like, in June of last year. Mm-hmm. The LLC and everything. So I only had, which is the best part is that in that 6 months I only made $6,000.
Sure.
And that was obviously not livable. And now this whole year, I'm not gonna throw any numbers out, but I
ain't gonna throw numbers out there, but it's high.
It's much higher than $6,000. But thankfully last year I went to I guess what do you call them, CPAs?
Yes.
Yeah. And like I was like, listen, I'm a dummy. Mm-hmm. This is the first business I've ever owned. Mm-hmm. What do I need to do to set up for next year?
It's the way you got to do it.
And
it's the way you got to do it.
And she put me through everything. She's like, listen, get QuickBooks. And I should have gotten QuickBooks a long time ago, but I have saved everything. But now I'm finally putting it all in. So when time comes, I can just go to her and be like, here it all is. And then she's like, oh. Yeah, she's like, you can bring me all the receipts, and we could sit here for 8 hours.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
What's funny is we just had our end of year meeting a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
and we were just talking about like so we have a fairly complicated like tax return every year that we need to file just because we have so many employees. We have a lot of different benefits and deductions and stuff like that, right? So there's a lot that goes into it, right? And luckily, we have such a phenomenal CPA, and then we have obviously Taylor, like our internal bookkeeper, that keeps shit running. You know what I mean? Like it's like the biggest headache that I don't have to deal with. Yeah. Like all I have to deal with is the end of the year when they tell me, "Hey, you need to pay this much."
You're like, okay,
which is a little bit of a headache.
Yeah,
but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about how, like how organized we are in comparison to like what some other people will do. Greg was telling me, he's like, there's people I fire sometimes because like they come in at the end of the year and they basically just hand me a stack of stuff and are just like, here you go, like figure it out. And he's like, no, like we're not doing that right now. We're not playing those games here.
Yeah.
So
no, she did that too. She's like, you could be like this, or then she went over and got this file box. Like, would you be like this?
Don't be like that.
Don't be that.
Yeah. It's also going to cost you way more. We already pay a lot for our CPA. Like he's an expensive CPA, but it's because we know every I is dotted and every T is crossed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I will never get a notice from the IRA saying, "Hey, you owe us $500,000 from back due taxes for the last 6 years or something like that." So, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's fun, But yeah, 30%, stick it aside, make sure you got it. Yeah. And then here's the other thing too, like next year you'll be filing probably quarterly estimates and stuff then, knowing like, based on your income today. And then just, as you're doing your QuickBooks and stuff, make sure that you have obviously a P&L every month so you could see, this is what I made last year, but if last year it broke out to every month you were making $5,000, $6,000, whatever it is, and this month it's looking like you're making $10,000 a month or whatever, whatever numbers you throw out, you got to make sure you're putting that much extra aside past just your quarterly estimate.
Yeah.
Right? Because your quarterly estimate will be your 25% that you should be putting aside per quarter. But obviously, as your income goes up, that goes up as well. Yeah.
So I think I'm not making exponentially crazy amount of money, so it wasn't that crazy, but it's. Yeah.
But it will still this year. This coming year will still be more than last year. Hopefully, you know what I mean. Knock on wood, right? Be, So realistically, like if you made that little at the beginning of the year, you'll probably double your income next year. Yeah. So you just got to factor in those quarterly estimates are probably going to need to be double what they actually are. Yeah, and that's the hardest part about it. It's just always, it's nice to see the money come in sometimes, but then you see it's like, wow, like I have to owe this much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I look at like the business account, because I pay myself out of that or whatever, and it's like
because you're doing it the right way.
Yes, and I just look at that and I'm just like, there's a lot of money in there that's not mine. Yep, and it's sad. It makes me real sad.
You're like, wow, I could spend all that. But that's what some people do, and then they find themselves in a pickle.
Hey, you owe $25,000.
It's just so interesting. Like with my last company, like we had no fucking clue what was going on with taxes. Our CPA was garbage that we were using at the time. And like it was like there would be no meeting until the end of the year, and it would be the like, hey, here's everything kind of thing. And we had no clue. You know what I mean? End of year had come around. It's like, we weren't really putting money aside for anything. It's like we didn't know anything. And luckily, we never dug ourselves too far into a hole with any of that kind of stuff. But like our efficiency as far as like knowing what we were operating on and stuff was nothing. Yeah. We had no clue. Yeah. So, and that's why every year at the end of the year, it's like, well, we owe this much. Do we need to do a payment plan on it? Do we have the cash set aside? And, since we were filing, obviously, obviously a two-partner LLC, like it was like, what do you got? What do you got? Jesus. So it was not fun. It really more than anything, again, like I think that for the most part, we were responsible enough about knowing we were going to owe something. So it's not like we were just spending all of our money. Or at least I wasn't, right? I can't necessarily speak for him, but just the knowing now, knowing everything's taken care of. Yeah. Dude, it's the ultimate peace of mind because that's one thing I can't even imagine if I had to do all those things myself or understand all of those things myself. I wouldn't have the capacity left to focus on growing the business. So the more you have that straightened out, God, the more secure you'll feel with stuff. Yeah. Number one tip for you small business owners out there: get yourself some help.
Yeah,
get yourself some help.
Don't mess around with the tax man,
dude. Like honestly though, even like whatever questions and time you spent with Taylor, like her helping you get started on it, that would have been stuff you needed to learn yourself. Yeah, exactly. Or you would have had to pay somebody for it, probably a lot more. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I know. I owe her like a steak dinner or something for sure. I'll take you and your family out. Let's go.
Send her some baby gifts.
Yeah. Yeah, what baby gifts do you need that you don't probably already have 3 of at this point?
Right. Hell yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. So yeah, like Josh was saying, we were just kind of sitting downstairs for like a half hour before we started this, just talking about like big goals for the new year and stuff, setting personal goals, setting financial goals, setting business goals, all of those types of things. And it's something I don't see people do enough of, is literally, not only goal setting, everybody makes their New Year's resolution, everybody makes their plans of what they want to achieve. But like I was talking to you about, like, what's your action plan for that? What's your business plan for that? Like, how are you actually going to achieve that in a way that's not just like kill yourself for a month and then like burn yourself out, which is what happens with every New Year's resolution, whether it's a personal or a professional one.
Yeah. It becomes wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, like I always like to, like with any of the goals that I have, I always try to sit down with a piece of paper and like really write out like what are some steps that are going to lead to this goal. One thing I used to do, so it's interesting, like my notebook that I've had for probably 5 years that like I only use for some things, used to be like my full-on planner, right? And every single day what I would do, literally, it's so interesting. I wish I had it up here. Every single day what I would do is I would divide the paper where I would like have a little top section up here, and then I'd have my bottom section here. And at the top, I had 10 roughly goals that I had, right? Okay. Whatever they were, right? Yeah. At the time, I remember it was like develop Heights Columbus, post 3 times a day, save X amount of money, read 25 pages of a book, whatever. Yeah. I had all of these goals that I had that were like short-term and long-term goals, right? Yeah. And actually, it literally was broken up into short-term and long-term goals. And the short-term ones were like my daily goals, right? My long-term ones were the bigger ones, like develop this, create this product, et cetera, right? And then underneath it, every single day, what I would do is I would make a checklist of things I needed to do, right? Yeah. It was my daily to-do list, right? Yeah. And I would take all my short-term goals. I would put all of those short-term goals listed out that I needed to accomplish. And then for all of the long-term goals, because here's the thing. You could, like even in my to-do list right now that I have, I try to keep it pretty short at this point because I try to stay up to date on it, right? Yeah. I got a little to-do list right here, So any of these things, some of them, if I were to look at it, online coaching program, right? Like trying to create an online coaching program. Yeah. What I would do if that were under long-term goals is I would write out what's one, no matter how small, thing that I can do today that will take me one step closer to that goal. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like even something as simple as, so we had talked about for an online coaching program, one thing that I'm going to need right off the rip with it is a habit tracking app, right? So today, maybe all I do is I just download 3 habit tracking apps on my phone, and I don't even do anything with them. I literally just download them onto my phone so I can start playing with them. Yeah. That's one thing that I can do that's going to take me a step closer in that direction. Then tomorrow, maybe it's I play around with one of them. Not all of them. I just go in, see what the features are, maybe try to create some habits and stuff on it, right? Then the next day I do a different one. Then the next day I do a different one. Then the 4th day, maybe I create a diagram that is pros and cons of each one that I like. Yeah. Right? Then maybe the 5th day is I actually write out, not in the app, but on a piece of paper, these are the habits that I want to create, right? And I'm literally creating the game plan for something that I literally want to do in my head right now. This is how I should go about doing this realistically. You know what I mean? So maybe I write out the habits. Then the next day, maybe I upload those habits to that app, right? Then the 7th day or the 8th day or whatever day that would be, I have one friend download that app so they could try to see how it functions back and forth, right? 9th day, make adjustments, make tweaks. Yeah. Right? 10th day, create videos for all of it. These are the habits, right? 11th day, 12th day, 13th day. By 2 weeks, realistically, at that point, I may have a product that I could start using, But instead of overwhelming myself of, I have to create this online coaching program, it's just one baby little step at a time. Yeah. These are things that I could do to achieve this goal, right? Yeah.
That's like the Dave Ramsey thing, baby steps.
Everything is about baby steps and small wins. Yeah. But seriously though, like that's the whole reason why that's why he created the baby step program, and that's why he created the debt snowball and stuff instead of doing what everybody does, which is the debt avalanche. I think, which is you get the highest interest rates one paid off or whatever. Blah blah blah. Forget for debt conversation, right? Yeah. But the idea is the quicker you can achieve small wins, the more momentum starts building, right? The hardest part is starting. We know that. So for me, the downloading the apps and the starting to play around with the apps, that's the hardest part. But once I get going on that, all those other details I started outlining, it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of how I'm working on my website right now. I decided I needed to kind of overhaul that, and I'm going to put in like the pricing like list and all that kind of stuff. But Yeah, it was like like I was sitting there, I was just like,
it's daunting when you think about I need to overhaul the website.
Yep.
Right? Same deal, and probably that same notebook or something. When we first created the Miracle website, like I remember this feeling of pulling it up real quick here.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, so I remember the feeling of being like, oh my God, I need to create so much content for this. I need to gather testimonials. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 individual pages of content. There's like 6 blog posts on here I needed to write for it. You know what I mean? Like I needed to figure out the layout and stuff for it. And I just took it one piece at a time. You know, I think that was something that was on my list at the time was, you know, services, right? First, I need to just outline. I literally remember one of them. I need to figure out what my pages are even going to be, right?
Yeah.
Let's write out all the pages. Boom. Got all the pages. Good for today.
Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
Next thing, let's just tackle the homepage. What information do we need to be on the homepage? Done. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But the more you can dissect this stuff down into small, really easy to follow steps, the easier it's going to be. And this is literally how I structure my life. Everything that I fucking do.
Yeah.
You know? Training, right? You could ask probably any staff member or trainer that we have of the annoying, tedious conversations we have about taking anything we're doing from a training standpoint and breaking it down into 100% clear points and steps along the way.
Yeah.
You know, like when we're teaching commands, right? I remember I was having this conversation with Bridget the other day. I used to have at Heights a whiteboard on the wall because when we were using primarily food and we were teaching like our good marker, which stabilizes commands and stuff, I would have this like exact process I needed people to follow without jumbling things together.
Yeah.
Right? It was like put dog into sit command.
Yeah, I remember this.
Tell dog good.
Yeah.
Right? Then grab treat and give to dog. Step away from dog. Mark with good.
Yeah.
Step back to dog.
Yeah.
Take treat out of pouch, etc., etc., etc. Dropping stuff over here. Can't be having those. Hold on. Gotta punch this thing back in the wall. There we go. Got it. There we go. Etc., etc., etc. Right? Because this applies to dog training. This applies to life. This applies to your business. Right? Because if you can't break these things down into clearly digestible steps, you will blur everything together and you will not have the foundation and the framework you need to be sustainable.
Yep.
It's everything. You know what I mean? So any great plan has easy to follow steps. Any great coaching plan, any great training plan, any great nutrition program, any great anything.
Yeah.
They're clear, easy to follow steps.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Devin gets caught on that a lot is I'm like, okay, you know, if you want to do this certain thing, you know, and then she just looks at like, okay, we have to clean the house today or something. Yeah. She's like, she starts thinking about the kitchen, the living room, the dining, dining room, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, just think of this, just get the kitchen done first. And then you do the hallway, I'll do the living room. Like, we can get this done in like a couple hours. Like, what do you like?
These tasks don't take as long as you think that they do, but when you start overthinking them, they do.
Yeah, exactly. And then you spend a half an hour thinking about them before you even do anything.
Yep.
But people do get caught up on the big picture. And
big picture big picture is important, but the more you could break down the big picture, the easier it will be. Right. Yeah. And you know what's interesting? I think that some people, kind of have this hardwired into them more than others. You know, like I would say that myself, I remember my dad, stuff like that. They're very analytical about things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when I look at things, I always look at things like that. What, how can I break this down? How do I look at this? Stuff like that. Where I think some people just look at, like Kate's that way as well. You know, like she kind of looks at like big picture, right? Like we got all these things we need to do. Right? Yeah. How are we going to do them?
It's like one at a time. That's how we'll do it. Yeah.
Exactly. So
yeah,
helps you feel less overwhelmed. Like I said, I don't get as stressed out by all of the stuff I need to do. Sometimes I do, obviously, but for the most part, I don't when I'm able to break them down and understand actually these are the things I need to do. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And I think a good note on this is like I knew that I wanted to do this as a living and make a career out of it. Right. If I just had looked, a few years ago and been like, I just want to be Brittany Gidley, you know, like I want that success. I want that right now.
How
like,
do you get it, though?
and I didn't try to break it down to these smaller things that doing free stuff or doing smaller jobs for less money and blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be from $6,000 a year to being able to live off of it in 1 year's time, you know?
Yep.
And it's just, yeah, I mean, I think that's why a lot of people get caught up, like we've talked about before, with not, they have these ideas and they want to start this business, but they never do because they get so overwhelmed with, it takes all these steps to start this business. Like, I don't have time for that, blah, blah, blah. And when you could just, start the LLC here and then get your insurance later, or, start getting clients, a couple weeks, just take one step at a time. So
100%. So, moral of the story, set yourself goals for this new year, but break them down.
Yeah,
Come up with baby steps of how you will achieve these things.
Don't make it a New Year's resolution. Make it a goal.
Make it a New Year's plan.
New Year's plan. I
like it.
that.
Hell yeah. Okay, so transitioning to next topic here. Speaking of breaking things down, right? We've talked numerous times. I like making these guides. I got this training guide, breaks down the training process. We've got, a guide as far as dealing with aggressive dogs. We've got all sorts of, we got guides for our staff at the facility for different day-to-day tasks that they need to do, right? One thing that I was talking about with the staff just yesterday is coming up with a guide as far as taking dogs new places with you, right? So we could discuss and break down the training phases all day long, right? Like I have that clearly outlined in this guide here. This is how we teach everything. This is learning theory. These are, this is how we teach sit, down, stay, all that kind of stuff, right? Then you get into the end of your training process, right? Which is once you've taught your commands, which you get into, mostly you're generalizing, right? You're generalizing things to new places, and this is where you hit a point where you get your real world reliability, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about here where, I broke down, and this is as simple as I made it, and this is where they actually came to me, they're like, you should go more into detail with this. You should create something like this solely for this. Because for me, generalizing commands in my mind is simple. Generalizing simply means we're taking something and we're making sure that it's proficient in a new place.
Yep.
Right? So what I had wrote down in the guide is we can generalize, obviously, to places and distractions. So for places, I put, remember, dogs do not generalize well, meaning just because you've taught something in one environment does not mean they can immediately see it as the same somewhere else. Take each of your commands and make sure you can find about 3 to 4 places to proof it in. Ideas are the upstairs training room, the hallway, downstairs training room, lobby, outdoors, park, indoor, public place. Try to check each command off one at a time in each of these places to further the dog's understanding of these behaviors. So basically we're saying, dog knows sit here, make sure they know sit downstairs. Dog knows sit downstairs, make sure they know it outside. Dog knows it outside, make sure they do it at Home Depot. Dog does it at Home Depot, make sure they do it at Edgewater, et cetera, right? Somewhat a simple concept, right? But there are complexities to it we'll get into in a minute. So next one, distractions, obviously. The higher the distraction, the harder it is for your dog to perform. In addition to changing the environment you work in, make sure that you're increasingly making things more distracting for them in each command. Every dog has different things that will distract them more than others. So read the dog and make sure you target the hard areas. As you increase distraction, make sure you are still working commands one at a time until they are smooth with those distractions. And if the dog is struggling, remember that if you are being clear and consistent with your communication, it will always be a motivation issue, right? Now, this is where things get complex, is when you start combining generalizing to places as well as distractions. So the conversation I was having with a trainer yesterday is we have a newer board and train in, right? And they took the dog to Edgewater for the first time, right? And the dog had been crushing it in the facility, doing really, really well, right? So in their mind, it's like, all right, well, we're going to take the dog to Edgewater, right? We're going to see how the dog does around other dogs and other people, right? That's typically the reason why we go to Edgewater, is to work distractions, right? And what immediately happened is they went there, they realized the dogs were way too much for this dog. Couldn't get the dog under control. Dog was reacting. They were chasing that reactivity, trying to stop that reactivity. And they're like, listen, need a little assistance with this. What do we do, right? So I was like, all right, well, let's load the dog up. We went to Edgewater, right? And first thing, there were a couple dogs off in the distance, but I was like, I'm not even worried about those. I was like, let's walk the dog first here. Immediately, you could tell dog was very distracted. Dog was not walking as smoothly it was walking at the facility, right? We kind of cleaned that up a little bit, right? And I was like, all right, work some downs, right? Don't worry about down stays or anything like that. I just want to see you do some downs with the dog, right? Went to go do the downs. Very, very, very clearly, we realized that down was not generalized to that environment at all, right? It was like we had never taught a down to this dog like in our life.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, like the dog's tuned out. The dog is like just and it wasn't even a dog thing. It wasn't even a distraction thing. It was just the environment. Nothing had been generalized to that environment yet, right?
Okay.
But the issue that we made was we were trying to go to this environment and we were trying to tackle the distractions before we generalized to the place. And this kind of goes hand in hand with socialization. When we talk about socialization, I always say you could only really do one at a time, right? People, dogs, environments. Like when you're socializing with people, right? New people, you can't have new dogs or new environments. Right? When you're socializing with new environments, you can't have people socialization or dog socialization.
Yeah.
When you're socializing with new dogs, you can't have new people, you can't have new environments, right? This is kind of the same. We don't want to do generalizing to new places and generalizing to new distractions at the same time because everything will be a mess, right? If we look at the first environment you're generalizing to, our facility, right? We get these dogs to a point where they can tune out the dogs, they could tune out the people and stuff like that in that environment, something that typically would have been a really high distraction because we first focused on getting a baseline level of communication. We made sure the dog understood what we wanted in that environment. We generalized to that environment. From there, we increasingly built up the distraction, right? So when you go to a new place, when you go to Edgewater, when you go to Home Depot, something like that, one thing that I do with the dogs every time I go there is I always say, forget the distractions. Don't even try to go around the distractions first. Make sure that the dog will focus on you. Make sure the dog will walk nicely with you. Do a couple of commands and make sure the dog is understanding now that this place is the same as that place.
Yeah.
From there, you can increase distraction. But the problem is if you're increasing distraction before the dog has had an opportunity to generalize anything to that environment, when you're correcting the dog or when you're asking the dog to focus back in on you, they legitimately don't know what it is you want yet. Right? So because they don't know what it is you want yet, they're going to be getting corrections. They're going to be getting information thrown at them they don't know what to do with, which will create more stress, more frustration, and more reactivity in this case. Right? So what we did is we focused just in that session on we're generalizing to this environment, right? As soon as we generalized that environment, we started seeing the dog get more tuned in. We saw a couple dogs at a distance that the dog was focused in and didn't worry too much about. And then we were able to have a successful session, right? So moral of this story is we're going to be breaking down kind of a guide as far as taking your dog to new places and tips and tricks for that. Again, in my case, every time I go somewhere, whether it's a Home Depot session, whether it's an Edgewater session, first thing is the walk. Get the walk under control. That's the most baseline thing that you need in a new place, right? Can we generalize and get the dog understanding, staying in position, key without any leash help. Them understanding, staying there, not because you're holding them there because they know that's where they need to be. From there, you need to take whatever stationary command it is that you're going to be using, whether it's a sit, whether it's a down, and you need to make sure that command is generalized perfectly to that environment. Work it a bunch of times by itself, just in the new environment without additional distractions. Not around a ton of people, not around a ton of dogs. Once you have that box checked, if you're going to be working come commands in that environment, generalize your come command to that environment. Make sure that your obedience commands before you tackle the environment are as smooth as you need them to be, as smooth as you expect them to be somewhere else, right? From there, you start increasing the distraction. And that's why it's broken down in this way, where it's places first, generalize these commands to new places. From there, increase the distraction. So, just a little pointer for everybody when you're taking your dog new places. Focus on those things. Focus on the generalization process before you increase the distractions with this kind of stuff.
I see a lot of people probably just, they get it back home, their dog back, and they're just like, let's go to the busy park and see how his training is.
And you figure when you're going somewhere new, you literally... I'm losing my train of thought here. When you go somewhere new, or when you go back to your home post-board and train, right? That's the first place you need to generalize. That's why I always tell people, don't, when the dog goes home, immediately jump to, we're going to have all these people come over to see the dog, right? Or don't go straight from the facility to the pet store, right?
Yeah.
Which is going to be distractions and new place.
Yeah.
We need to first and foremost get your dog generalizing all of the commands and stuff in your home environment without the additional distractions that you're going to be adding in eventually. Yeah. Once you have that smooth, then you increase the distractions. And that's why our board and train program is structured in the way it's structured, where we do the 1 week check-in. Is because first week is all about the generalization back home in your environment. Second week and on is about increasing your distractions to more of a real world level.
Yeah.
You know, and god damn, the number one mistake people do is when they take the dog. We've had, actually, it's been a while since we've had this happen, but I remember one time in particular, we had a dog go home from a board and train here for serious reactivity issues, right? And it's literally the second they left the facility, they went straight to the pet store because they wanted to test the training. And it was a goddamn disaster.
Yeah.
A disaster. They called us, the dog isn't trained, blah, 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 you know? Just like freaking out. And it's like, you don't even know what to do yet.
Yeah.
You literally don't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, like of course it was a mess.
Yeah. You need to learn as much as the dog does.
Yeah.
You have to be in tune with each other.
Oh, man. So stuff like that, you know, it gets a little frustrating sometimes, but it is what it is. So those are just a couple quick tips here on taking your dog to new places, right? Keep in mind realistic expectations with this kind of stuff. And then again, back to the conversation about board and trains and stuff. If you're doing a board and train with us, it's not the quick, you know, you have to learn how to communicate with the dog. It's like, it's a language, right? Yeah. And it's no different than, right? If you go to a foreign environment, right? And you... Let me give a real example here. Let's say I suddenly became CEO of some like Italian company somewhere where nobody spoke English, right? And I was trying to tell all of these employees to do certain things in English.
Yeah.
And they had no idea what I was saying, and they couldn't perform any of those tasks.
Yeah.
Right? Does that mean that those are bad workers or that they don't know anything? No. It means that it's a me problem because I don't know the language and how to effectively communicate for them to do these things or not to do these things.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same fucking thing with dogs, right? Just because you're trying to tell a dog to do something doesn't mean, and they're not doing it, doesn't mean that they don't know it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they don't know it because they don't understand the way you're communicating it to them. But if you communicate it to them in a clear way that they understand, i.e. the way that we teach, right? Then they get it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So.
That was a good correlation.
Yeah, it was an interesting one.
Yeah, when you went to Italy, like, how was that? Like, knowing there's that communication barrier.
So for the most part, it was fine. When I went to Italy, I was in obviously the touristy parts of it.
Yeah,
Rome, Florence, all those. You know,
pretty much.
So most of them speak enough English where you can communicate.
Yeah.
But there were one or two times when I went to like one was in like the Chianti Valley and stuff. And like you get into some of these wineries, and like no, they don't speak any English. And you're kind of just like that. Yeah. And they kind of get it.
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't that bad. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So, last big topic here. Bought a couple new books the other day. So, I was on Facebook Marketplace. I saw some guys selling these. These are 2 old hunting dog books. So, one is called Training Pointing Dogs, Paul Long. When was this? Let me see how old these are, because they seem pretty old. Okay.
They look old.
1974. Ooh. This one's from. This one, How to Train Hunting Dogs by William F. Brown. This one is from, well, hardcover book. This was $7 at the time, so you know it's old. Ooh, damn. 1941.
Oh, boy.
Hot damn. Very exciting. Very exciting. Is that actually when this was? Yeah. No, 1942. Yeah.
My gosh.
Holy moly.
World War II era book right here.
So I would love to get into some of these books, talk about them. I'll tell you, one thing I don't know that much about is hunting dogs. You know, it's something that living in the city, you know, there's not that many people that are involved in this type of work in Cleveland. And honestly, it's kind of a dying thing more than anything. You know, a lot of the people that work with hunting dogs and stuff, they live out in the back countries and stuff like that, you know. Yeah. It's not really happening in Ohio.
No.
There's some people here and there, obviously, that know about it. But it's always been a really interesting world to me. You know, there's a girl that we used to do Mondio Ring with. Her name's Jessica, and she was pretty involved in hunting, and didn't necessarily do like formal hunting dog work, but she did train her Malinois to do like deer detection, kind of, right? I don't know what you even call it, tracking, kind of.
Yeah.
Or basically, if they injured a deer and it was bleeding, the dog would be able to track the deer to wherever it went to ultimately, right? So I thought these would be interesting books to read. So we're gonna start with training pointing dogs, because it looks like it's a fairly short read, and we're gonna kind of get into this. It looks like Training Pointing Dogs is all the answers to all your questions.
Oh,
by Paul Long. To all my canine friends who may disagree but cannot contradict.
That's a good one.
All right. Forward by A. Hamilton Rowan Jr., the director of field trials and hunting tests, the American Kennel Club. All right. The importance of Paul Long's book is its straightforward, simple country honesty. I once met Paul Long at a field trial in New Jersey shortly after this book was first published in 1974. I had a chance then to chat with him, long enough to confirm my suspicions that here was a man who knew almost everything there was to know about training pointing dogs. As a young boy in my native England, my father saw it that an expert was available to give me all the answers to all my questions about country living. We lived on a dairy farm south of London. Our resident, Paul Long, was the middle-aged son of a Scottish gamekeeper, the many likes of which came to this country in the 1930s to impart their ingrained training smarts on the gun dog retrievers that had become the vogue of the wealthy eastern estate owners. James Pettigrew, whose primary job was to tend my parents' extensive flower and vegetable gardens, was a countryman in the purest sense of the word. Every day that I was home from boarding school, we would take long walks with his son through the adjoining fields and woods. At first, birds, flowers, and trees were identified, animal tracks and trails studied, wild edibles gathered, and each spring, bird nests found and watched. Later, it was time for us to have a shooting dog. A Springer Spaniel pup was found, and her training begun. From single-barreled 410s, we graduated to 12-gauge doubles under Pettigrew's ever-watchful eye. Judy became an effective gun dog. By then, we were allowed to take her afield by ourselves, and game almost became a culinary staple. We were certifiable countrymen after 10 incredibly meaningful years, my lifelong legacy from a superb countryman. As a boy, Paul Long also received a countryman's legacy from Mike Simontor, the legendary New England trainer of English setter gun dogs. After graduating from high school, Long made dog training his life's work. Is there any wonder, then, why Long should have gained the straight common-sense knowledge about training pointing dogs after all these years? Although he is no literary stylist, his writing contains none of the puffery found in other dog training books. His style enables Long to answer all of your dog training questions in 84 pages. I love a lack of fluff.
Yeah. The puffery.
The puffer. What did it say? Yeah. The puffery.
Yeah, the puffery.
Each year, new books are written on the training of dogs. Pointing dogs. Often the authors are new to the subject matter and feature new training methods based, perhaps on the latest research of some canine psychologist. It all makes for interesting and sometimes entertaining reading, but these books are not written by countrymen. They inevitably confuse the experienced dog owner who is trying to train his equally confused dog. Above all else, they assume that training problems will never happen. Laboratory theories may look promising in the lab, however, they are of little use in the woodcock covert or upon entering the bird field at a field trial. So basically what they're getting at here is they're starting to kind of revolutionize this idea of positive training with things.
Yeah.
And they're kind of poking a little bit of fun at it, right? Yeah. And it's funny that in 1974, when this came out, everyone was having those same thoughts of like, come on, guys, your little fucking lab experiments aren't real life.
Yeah.
The world is not a controlled box, is what they're getting at. You're going to run into problems. Your dog is going to try to run away. Yep. You're going to need to get them to come back to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. It's always interesting when you see something this old, you know?
Yeah.
Where they talk about those types of things.
It's true.
What counts in the real world of bird dog training is knowledge gained from years and years of training, hunting, and field training pointing dogs. The dogs themselves taught Long over the years just how to outsmart a dog, how to anticipate its next move, how to mold your pup into the likeliness of your needs, And in this later regard, here's what usually happens. Along the way, and just when you're ready to compliment yourself on a training job well done, that sparkling canine mind will suddenly taunt you with a major behavioral problem. He may be stealing points, or flagging on points, or perhaps not even pointing his birds anymore. The development of any one of these problems, and many others, will cause most amateur trainers to seek psychiatric, psychic, or spiritual support, albeit for themselves, because such counsel is not available for their psychotic dogs. My advice to the amateur whose dog has placed him on the threshold of a nervous breakdown is to check Long's book, because one is sure to find that he has experienced the same problem. Then follow his old-fashioned patent medicine cure. It will generally work. Truly important about Long's book is its applicability not only to the upland game hunter and the competitive field trailer, but also to the participant in the new hunting tests for pointing breeds. Tailored to the upland hunter, hunting tests are a new concept of testing dogs against a hunting performance standard in a non-competitive event. The program was pioneered by the American Kennel Club. A pointing dog that has been trained to carry out the bidding of its owner is always admired. The owner, however, with an unruly dog, will be shunned as a hunting companion. At field trials, training inadequacies will leave a dog out of the ribbons, and at a hunting test, it will fail to receive a qualifying score. The responsibility for training a dog rests entirely with its owner, even though he may elect to have the job done professionally. The responsible owner of a pointing dog will always see to it that his dog receives sufficient training to suit his needs. To this end, Paul Long's book can be the indispensable as a check cord. It's interesting because the biggest takeaway from this here is something we were just talking about earlier as well, which is, my advice to the amateur whose dog has placed him on the threshold of a nervous breakdown is to check Long's book, because one is sure to find that he has experienced the same problem. Josh, let's see that. What was it exactly that you stole from me yesterday? An expert is a person who has made all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field.
God, that's such a
I
good
would say that sounds pretty similar to this.
Yes.
Here's the thing, right? I reposted that yesterday by Chris Doe. I posted that yesterday because of the truth behind it, that the reason why I'm so good at what I do, shoot my horn for is because of the uncountable amount of absolutely stupid, ridiculous fuck-ups that I've made over the course of my time doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel it. Yep.
That's it, right? Like I've learned from so many mistakes that I've needed to make. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
that when a mistake, you know, was interesting. I think it said in the comments of that post. What did it say? Hang on, let me pull it up real quick here. Here it is. See post. Was it this? I don't know if it was this one. Only by repeatedly exposing yourself to the same problem over and over again can we spot patterns. Yeah. Okay. So only by repeatedly exposing ourselves to the same problem over and over again can we begin to spot patterns. It's also why experts can generate solutions so quickly and effortlessly. If I've experienced any number of issues, right? Major issues, minor issues, issues in between, totally debilitating issues you could have ran into over the course of your professional time doing this. Mm. And if I've really had the self-awareness to look at it and be like, what did I do wrong that caused this issue, right? Mm. You're going to get so much quicker to the solution to those problems, where when other people run into them, you can immediately be like, oh, I've screwed that up before. Here's what I did to fix it, right? Or I've made this mistake before. This is what you could do to avoid that, right? And that's why as generations move on, you'll find that people become more efficient and cut more and more off their learning curve with things, right? Where I remember when I was getting involved in the dog training world initially, I remember a lot of the gatekeepers at the time, right? These guys had been around for 15, 20 years, longer than that sometimes, right? Where they had to create all these things and figure all this stuff out, right? And my generation of trainers, like younger guys like myself who got into this and wanted to learn from those people. That's the reason why over the course of like 4 years, right, I was able to make such a name for myself so quickly, is because I tried to learn as much from those mistakes that those people made, right? And then I encountered my own new hurdles that they hadn't experienced before from those things. And the people now coming up now are going to move even quicker through that.
Yeah.
I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast with Jocko the other day, right?
Are you going to talk about the jiu-jitsu guy?
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
That's what I was about to bring up.
Dude, 100%, right? So Joe and Jocko are talking about jiu-jitsu, right? So obviously a very popular competition, sport, whatever you want to call it. And he was talking about how, some of these guys like Eddie Bravo and whatever the guy that Jocko trains with's name and stuff like that, these guys had to spend years creating these moves and figuring them out and practicing them and stuff like that. And these new guys coming up, they're able to take all that information it took them 10 years to figure out and just apply it like that. So in 2 years, they could have the knowledge that this guy had or that took him 15 years to learn, right? So they're talking about how this next generation of jiu-jitsu trainers, right, or people practicing jiu-jitsu are going to be just these world-class stars at it because they have all of this experience to take from. You know?
Exactly.
And it's really interesting to me when you look at stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why our responsibility as professionals is to pass along our knowledge to the next generation. If we truly care about what we say we care about, right? Yeah. Which is helping people, helping owners, helping dogs, helping new business owners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're not so freaking egotistical that it's like, I need to keep this information for ourselves. Yeah. That's how you make a long-lasting legacy. Mm-hmm. That's how you create that legacy for yourself, is by sharing that knowledge and allowing somebody that's going to be around for longer than you are to be able to carry that torch and take it even further than you were able to, right? Yeah. It's like with kids, right? When they say, don't give them everything you never had, teach them everything that you didn't know. Yeah. Right? Because if they could learn from these lessons, if you could learn from these lessons, if you could learn from the lessons of business owners and stuff like that, you'll go further because of that. Yeah.
That's why we progressed as society.
Yeah.
So much in the last few decades.
Yep.
Because the things that took forever to figure out,
we learned from
especially now, you literally have on your computer or you're on your phone, you have the ability to learn so much in an instant. You can just Google
100%
YouTube video, whatever.
100%. So it's interesting. I'm a big fan of a lot of this kind of stuff. All right. Where are we at here? Let's see.
Probably like 45-ish.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to get into chapter 1 here. Ooh, electric trainers. I like it. All right. Things to ponder. I do like pondering things. All right. What kind of puppy should I buy? I've found fine bird dogs in all pointing breeds, and also disappointing dogs in all. Pick the breed that takes your eye and find out all you can about the ancestry of the puppy that appeals to you. If you want to win field trials, look for winners in his pedigree. If you're not interested in field trials and are just looking for a good dog to hunt over, find out how his parents performed under the gun, and then hope for the best. Great gun dogs come out of field trial lines, and dogs with the range, style, and vigor sought for in field trials appear where only a comfortable gun dog was wanted. Much more important than picking the breed is picking a dog that fits your personality. Some dogs in all breeds are extroverts. Others are introverts. If you are a no-nonsense individual, dislike petting an animal, and are not above giving a good thrashing, get a dog that will stand up to your personality without cringing or showing fear until you have it thoroughly trained. Again, this is what 1974 gets you.
Yeah.
Now, let's say this.
No fluffer or whatever.
I agree, kind of. Right?
Yeah.
Get a dog that suits your personality, right? If you're loud, if you're obnoxious, if you're rough, if you're that kind of person, right? Yes, you need to get a more stable-tempered dog, right? Because there are plenty of dogs out there. Just this right now. I'm excited, right? I'm amped up. I'm moving my arms around, stuff like that. There are plenty of dogs out there that'll really shy them away.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Where some people are a little softer, a little bit more sweet.
Yeah.
They want to cuddle with the dog, this, that. You know what I mean? Like those times you might want that kind of softer tempered dog, right? True. Introvert, extrovert, right? Humanizing a little bit here, but it's kind of the same concept. When you go to look at puppies, you could tell the difference between them with those types of things. Yep. Now, I will say, if you're not above giving a good thrashing, we're not thrashing, guys. No more thrashing.
No more thrashing.
We're a couple decades past that here.
We don't thrash anymore.
We don't thrash anymore. On the other hand, you object to any degree of punishment as a training aid. You should get a dog that thrives on affection and only needs a harsh voice or light correction to set it right. Well, again, exact conversation. He's not wrong with any of this, right? You have to pick a dog that suits your needs.
Yeah.
Right? Training will solve a lot of these problems, though.
Yeah, we've talked about before. Don't get a Malinois if you're not going to do things with it.
And until you are sure of the dog's personality and your own, take the light approach.
Yes, please.
All right. How do I keep my dog happy? The things a dog needs for basic contentment are food, clean water, a warm bed, shade and warm sun, a little care, a little companionship. Companionship was mentioned last, but is not least. It need only be, hello, boy, as you walk by, but like a politician with a prospective voter, let him know that you are glad to see him and give him recognition. Dogs are simple creatures, guys. They don't need anything more than this. And keep in mind, he said, a little care and a little companionship. He didn't say smothered the dog to no end. Yeah. And I actually like his analogy of a politician with a prospective voter. Care enough about him to keep him engaged.
Yeah.
But don't overdo it and scare him away.
That's true. That's pretty good.
What should I feed my dog? I give my opinion only as a dog trainer and not as a dietitian. But you could check it with your veterinarian. You cannot give a healthy dog anything better for him than a good brand of dry dog food, meal, kibbled, or nuggets, mixed with water. My research has gone into the formulation of these foods, and probably, on the whole, the dogs that eat them have a better balanced diet than their masters. Some of the same makers and others have fancied up their foods to look more appealing to the human eye, but this makes little difference to the dogs. Some makers of canned dog food boast that their product is all meat, and therefore, presumably better for your dog. If you check the analysis printed on the labels, you may find that all meat products has much less of the protein that an active dog needs than the average dry food. Now, again, back in the day, they weren't doing raw food and all that at the time, which you can get into. Raw food is better than dry food. But I think the point here is don't overthink it. You don't need to have it super fancy. I've met so many dogs on freaking Purina dog chow that's like $25 for a 50-pound bag that live to like 17 or 18.
Yeah.
You know? The key is keep the diet consistent. Don't overfeed. Don't underfeed.
Yeah.
And they'll be fine.
Yep.
Don't overthink it. Should I try to train him myself? By all means. You'll get to know your dog better and more about your own limitations and ability and temperament. You will also get a better appreciation of the problems a professional trainer has to solve in turning out a well-trained dog. Frankly, it's your dog. You bought him for your pleasure. If you're not successful, who cares except you? There's the rub. You do care. Since you care, keep reading. I believe that anyone can train a bird dog if you will pay close attention to this book. Sure, try to train him yourself, but don't be surprised if it doesn't work out how you like.
I like it. That's the rub.
That's the rub.
I love, you can tell the English accent through his writing.
What are the main things in dog training? The basic rule of dog training is repetition, 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 plus common sense. We're lacking that sometimes.
True.
One nail at a time will build a house. Repeatedly will eventually produce a well-trained dog. One step at a time.
Dang.
Will get you to your goal. Repetition of those steps will produce the end result.
Didn't know we were going to tie everything in this book, did we?
You like that?
Yeah.
Remember that dogs are like youngsters, with this difference. A puppy does not fully mature until it is about 3 years old, while young people do not until their late teens. This comparison can be carried a bit further. A puppy under a year is like a child in his preschool and kindergarten years, when a lot can be learned through informal training. When 12 months old, the puppy is like a child entering grade school. He is ready for the formal, disciplined schooling that will provide the base for all future progress. Failure to complete this training satisfactorily will always be a handicap. Not until he gets passing grades in this elementary schooling is he ready for the further education needed to fill his role in life ably and responsibly. Remember that until a dog performs satisfactorily in 5 different locations, unfamiliar areas for a hunting dog, or different field trial courses for a field trial dog, your training cannot be considered complete because of generalization. Look at that. What did it say? Until the dog performs satisfactorily in 5 different locations. What did I write here? Hang on. Take each of your commands and make sure you could find about 3 to 4 different places to proof it in. Come on, guys. I mean, like, there's a reason why we say these things.
Yeah.
There is a reason why we say these things.
From the dang 70s, all right?
Jesus Christ. Bear in mind, too, that every dog being trained is looking for what I call his escape hatch. The dog being taught to heel is walking quietly at your side. Suddenly, he pulls away or reverses the side he is heeling on. Your dog is pointing a bird. Suddenly, he jumps in. You bring him back and command, whoa. He jumps in again. You bring him back with more determination. He knows that you mean business, but he relaxes on point, wags his tail, or even lies down. You have given your puppy a workout and are bringing him back to the car. Suddenly, he circles the car, maybe giving you a quick look, and takes off to hunt some more. All these dogs are seeking an escape hatch, a relief from training. A trainer must, from observation and instinct, anticipate these moves and thwart them before the dog can carry them out. Be one step ahead of the dog. That's all this is, right? Understand, and this is where I get into, I talk a lot about know your dog, right? If you know your dog, you know their habits, you know the things they will typically do, you could avoid almost all issues by being prepared to address them when they happen. That's it. That's the key. If you know your dog is going to jump on people, you must, from observation and instinct, anticipate those moves and thwart them before the dog can carry them out. You could stop it as soon as it happens with any of these issues that you talk about, right? Another key point in this, he was talking about a puppy under a year old is like a child in his preschool and kindergarten years when a lot can be learned through informal training. This is what we talked about with Waffles, where most of his training, like I'm still, we're still training and teaching his commands and stuff, but we still haven't done what I would consider like formal obedience training yet. It's been a lot of shaping of obedience because all of his training has been being done. Again, he's still chilling here right now. You know what I mean? It's been through teaching him what to do and what not to do. It's been teaching him the routines of the house. It's been teaching boundaries in the house. Right? And he's progressing immensely from just that. So I can take my time with the obedience stuff. That's kind of what they're getting at with this. Again, dogs are like children. You tell your kids to go to bed. They start, but then decide they need a glass of water or something to eat or to do their homework. That is their escape hatch. With dogs, as with children, firm instance will bring recognition of the fact that it is your wishes, not theirs, that must be obeyed. What do I need for training? Most of all, you need the attitude that you're going to be a teacher, not a brute. You also need a commanding voice, a whistle, and a place where you could work your dog. The larger the better, preferably several hundred acres. Jesus Christ. We don't have access to that around here. If possible, a supply of wild game. If you live in pheasant country, but the birds are scarce, I suggest that you strew a heavy feeding of scratch grain along roads near swampy areas. If birds are there, it will hold them for weeks and may draw others to the area. To supplement wild birds, you will need some pigeons and or quail. For pigeons and quail, it may be helpful if you could have a pigeon loft and quail recall pen. For yard training, you need mainly a leash, a cupboard tube from a roll of paper towels or foil paper, and several long check cords. A 30-foot cord will provide the most useful, but there are times when a shorter cord will do, and others when a 50-foot cord would be advantageous. I recommend 3/8 inch nylon, burned or taped at the ends for all. It runs smooth through the cover, and its size minimizes snagging. Don't buy small diameter nylon. It will burn your hand badly if you try to pick it up when it is running. Good cotton-covered clothesline or sash cord would be better in that respect, but not as good as the 3/8 nylon from the standpoint of snagging. For introducing your dog to a gun, it would be ideal to have an air rifle, a .22 rifle, and a .410 shotgun. To accustom the dog in easy stages to the boom of a large gauge shotgun. But there are other ways to do it. A cap pistol and a .22 blank pistol used judiciously will do. If training for field trials, you should have a .32 blank pistol, the minimum caliber permitted in some events. You may also have need of a choke collar or spiked collar. A slingshot, if your aim is good, or electric trainer will help you to correct the dog that disobeys beyond your reach. A slingshot.
Oh.
It would also be nice to have a dog box for carrying your dog to and from fields. A friend who will help you when teaching stouchness or backing, and an understanding spouse to look after your dog when you are away from home. Mainly, you need a strong desire to make your dog a success and ingenuity to think of acceptable substitutes for things beyond your reach. There's... Ooh, I gotta sneeze.
Oh. Bless you.
Hey. You know, it's interesting. A lot of these things people hear, and they'd be so freaking, like, offended by and traumatized by. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where this stuff doesn't surprise me because I understand the time and the place for it.
Yeah.
You know? Listen, we're not using slingshots on dogs, right? Like, obviously. Right? The next category. Do you advise whipping as discipline? Right? Like, we're not whipping dogs.
Yeah.
Right? But back in the day, when you were getting into the basics of this is an animal and the dog needs to be rewarded or disciplined, there were only so many ways to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And we've learned from all of this. We've learned where the ability to correct the dog from a distance with a slingshot, right? We've learned the benefits of being able to do that, and then we've taken it and looked at what's bad about this and how can we adjust it and make it more fair. Right? So I'm not saying that I approve of these things necessarily, but you have to factor in the time. We've talked about this. We talked about this with the puppy book. You factor in the time of when these things were created and how long it took to innovate some of this stuff so we could have the reliability that we have right now.
Yeah.
Right? That's it, right? That's why we're laughing about it to some extent right now, not because we approve of it or not because we're like, oh my God, I want to go do that or I think this is funny. Yeah. But it's just interesting to watch how things evolve.
Yeah.
You know? And this is where it comes from, you know? All right. Do you advise whipping as discipline? Consider for a minute, there is no animal, including man, that doesn't require a certain amount of pain to make a believer out of him. A dog is no exception, but when I say pain, I do not mean cruelty in any form. To possess the nice things in life, a man must have a job, and this is the pain he endures for those comforts. A boy getting an education must do homework. This is the pain he must accept for privilege. An athlete must practice, sweat, and maintain a rigorous schedule to keep fit. This is the pain he suffers for his moments of greatness. The same holds true for a dog. If you say no to a dog and forcing it, this is one form of pain. If it is necessary to shake his collar with the dog attached, this is the pain received for not obeying. If the lash is applied merely to inflict physical pain, it is not the answer. What was the purpose of it? Was it only enough to instill fear that worse could follow if the command is not obeyed to your satisfaction? A person who whips a dog out of a sheer temper should give up dogs and take up boxing. Or better, still, get a hen-pecking wife. The point to remember is this. The pain, whether it's your harsh voice, a shake of the collar, an electric trainer, or the lash, is to instill character and discipline. Whether your dog is an extrovert or an introvert, use only enough to have a well-trained dog. So this is the point here at the end, right? Use only enough to have a well-trained dog. So we have a saying in dog training that is as little pressure as we can get away with, but as much as we need to, which is exactly what he's saying here. Again, look past the harshness of the words that he's using. Mm-hmm. The point is, if you could just say no, hey, what are you doing? Hey, right? And that's sufficient to get the dog to stop. That's all we want to use. If you use more than that, then yes, you are being cruel, right? You should give up on dogs at that point. If you're doing it out of frustration, right? A person who whips a dog out of sheer temper, right? That's not okay either.
Not at all.
Right? The point is, when being fair, right, it should only be enough for the dog to get the point.
Yep.
Right? And I would completely agree with all of this. Mm-hmm. What are the four most important words to a dog? There are other words that, as time goes on, you will use, and your dog will learn to understand and obey. But the four most important ones are the four basic commands of yard training. When your dog has learned them, you will get compliments on his obedience and your ability as a trainer. These words are, whoa. A dog that stops in his tracks when you say whoa cannot get into trouble. So whoa is typically a stand command. No, to stop misbehavior. Here, to bring your dog into you, you could use come or his name, or use either command and his name. Heel, to have your dog walk quietly at your side. Do dogs think? Dogs have excellent memories. Their recall is terrific, but they do not think. Memory and instinct, not thought, guide their actions. I was going to say something. Disregard.
Okay.
For example, your dog is lying on the hearth, enjoying the heat from the open fire. The fire dies down and the dog gets cold. If he could think, he would paw a piece of wood onto the fire from the nearby supply. Instead, he just curls up tighter, his instinctive way of keeping warm. On the last day of hunting season, your dog does well. He points staunchly, stays ready to wing and shot, and retrieves on command. On opening day the next season, he tires a little sooner, but otherwise does just as well. He had memorized his training and your desires, and this, plus instinct, make him the same valuable dog. While kenneled, he had thought up no new ways of doing things. He was guided by his recall of training and what you expect from him. On the other hand, on the last day of the season, your dog does well on a couple of finds. Then he overruns a bird and chases. The rest of the day, he raises hell in general. On opening day of the next season, he is just as bad. If he could think, he would realize that he was defeating the purpose of his being there. But he cannot think, and nothing was done to revive his memory of his training. His instinct to chase was stronger than his memory. But now, you have had enough. You catch the dog and discipline him by the means appropriate to this dog. A few tastes of this, and once more he is a well-trained dog he had been. Not because the dog thought about it, but because you had revived his recall of what was expected of him and the discomfort that follows failure to regard your wishes. It's a good thing that your dog cannot think. If he could, his mind would break down with the confinement that is his lot, except when it suits your desires. It is good about living for the moment, and basic comfort make him happy. But you can think. Do that if your dog slips back in his training. Somehow, somewhere, some act of yours or failure to act is responsible. So dogs can only ever respond through instinct or trained commands. Is kind of what they're getting at here, right? And the instinct to do things, to chase things, to avoid discomfort, et cetera, are what we use to shape the dog's behavior, right?
Yeah.
Because, again, dogs can only understand when we like what they're doing or when we don't like what they're doing, and that's what shapes these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Should I buy an electric trainer? By all means, used properly, the electric trainer can help you in many ways in your regular training and in correcting faults like chasing rabbits or even chicken killing. But if you buy one, don't feel that to get your money's worth, you have to press that button on every possible occasion. A very few uses at the right time can do you and your dog a world of good, while excessive use or use at the wrong time can do great harm. And the electric trainer should never be used when the dog is approaching or pointing a bird on the ground. Although in experienced hands, the electric trainer can be used in almost any stage of training, I recommend as little use as possible in yard training, especially for the inexperienced. Teach your dog the commands he is expected to obey by conventional means. When you're sure he understands and he persists in disobeying, the shocker can help you. All dogs should be conditioned before the trainer is used on them. By conditioning, I don't mean merely putting the dummy collar on them for several days before energizing the collar is used. Although that is advisable, I mean that the dog has reached the point in training where he has some idea of what is expected of him and has learned that discipline follows disobedience. He has learned to accept milder forms of disobedience and will accept this. In his first experience with the collar, he will be momentarily upset, but he will not be completely bewildered or possibly balky as he might otherwise be. There are numerous electric trainers on the market, and you may have an opportunity to buy or borrow one previously used. Any will do if it will shock the dog when you want it to, and not shock it when you don't want it to. Some trainers, especially eerily models, are set off by shortwave radio transmissions from walkie-talkies, planes, and land vehicles. Some later models have a circuit to lock out interference, but will shock the dog if you touch his collar or even get very close to him. With this circuit switched on, or whatever trainer you buy or borrow, try it out with a test light. Or, better yet, have a friend operate the transmitter and you hold the collar contacts in your hand. This will help you know its capabilities and faults, if any. So, e-collars, again, talk about innovation. That is a tool that has gone from back in the day around this truly being what most people think of when they think of a shock collar, right?
Yeah.
They were inconsistent. They had issues with other things setting them off randomly. It literally was like sticking your finger in an electric socket. Like it was a shock, right?
Yeah.
Now, what we use nowadays, there's still shocks, for better choice of word, right? It's still creating electrical stimulation, but they're much more gentle, and they've evolved quite a bit to become more of an annoying discomfort than a painful discomfort, right? And that's the goal through all of this, is figuring out what's the minimal we can get away with for correcting dogs for different things. What different types of sensations can be more humanely used to correct the dog for things.
Honestly, I didn't even know they had e-collars back then.
Oh,
that far.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so company Tritronics was like the first e-collar company on the market, who Tritronics later got bought out by Garmin. So Garmin now is basically like the original e-collar company.
Yeah. Wow.
All electronic trainers should be tested frequently with a test light before use. A trainer can fail by not administering a shock when you want it to, which makes it useless. But it can also fail by not terminating the shock when you release the switch button, which makes it worse than usual. Check for both types of failures before using a trainer on a day when a thunderstorm is approaching. Test it to determine if the collar will be activated by distant lightning discharges. If it is, put the trainer aside until a better day. Practice developing a light touch to avoid long shocks. Put the test light on the collar in a dimly lit room and experiment to learning how briefly you can hold down the transmitter button and still light the light. Most discipline requires only a brief prickle. Many collars users shock too long. So, even then with trainers, we're still preaching be as humane as possible with this.
Yeah.
There's this idea, especially with like positive only trainers and stuff, that we're so like eager to do this, right? Where again, we know the benefit of it, but we're trying to get away with doing it in as easy of a way as possible. Later in this book, you will find times when I recommend placing the collar not in the traditional place, around the dog's neck, but around his belly, just ahead of his hindquarters. This is the place to have it if there is any chance the dog might be shocked while on a bird. Dogs are used to hitting briars and sticks when plunging through cover, and perhaps for that reason don't associate the prickle of the collar on the belly with the bird ahead, as they are liable to do when shocked on the neck. That's interesting. I actually did not know that's why they put it there in those cases.
Yeah, I was going to say, we talked about that before.
We've talked about different locations of it. Different trainers will use it for different things. So we talked about it from the sense of using the e-collar to push the dog forward to something or pull the dog away from something, which is more of a modern technique.
Yeah.
But I did not know that in the past it had been used in that way.
That's cool.
Can I anticipate my dog's intentions? Yes, a dog will telegraph by a dip of his head if he is called and isn't going to heed the command. He will turn his head slightly if he's going to blink, that is, shy away from the game. The eyes of a dog on point will protrude. He is waiting for the slightest movement of game or grass before jumping in to catch his quarry. A dog on point is in a hypnotic state until the bird fletches. When instinct takes over and the commands him to catch the birdier the dog, the more his eyes will pop. And if he is a puppy, derby, or otherwise not thoroughly trained, watch out. The slightest unnatural movement of your dog should set you to thinking hard. Why the movement? Watching your dog closely will help you to make your dog look his best. Wait until he has reached the objective of his cast to blow your whistle or signal otherwise. A dog headed for an object is not easy to turn. Once there, he is receptive to new orders. A dog on a good running cast at breakaway may stop momentarily to relieve himself. Just before he finishes this chore, he will look in your direction, and a command given at this precise moment will be obeyed. Field trials have been won or lost by this knowledge or lack of it. Again, interesting, knowing your dog. That's what all of this breaks down to here.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the first chapter of that. We're going to wrap that up on there. Very interesting stuff. I think I always look for similarities with some of this stuff. What are the similarities between stuff this old and things we're doing now? Yeah. And how can I find that evolution? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we were talking about, like everything you learn from the past and you create better, more efficient methods moving forward. And you could see, even though this is hunting dogs directly, right? Yeah. You could see the evolution to modern training and how we've improved on it just through a lot of these things.
Yeah. So. But it's kind of cool too, like how many things that he said that we honestly were just talking about earlier.
Yep.
Had no idea that it would be a correlation into 100%. That chapter. But it's pretty cool that you see, like you said, the history of it, but you can also see, like the whipping or how we fine-tuned certain small things, but it's still literally the base of what he was doing 40 years ago.
100%. So very interesting. So obviously today is Wednesday. We're going to be doing another podcast on Friday where we'll be getting more into that book.
Oh my God, the 70s were 50 years ago.
I know. It's a long time.
Holy shit.
It's a long time. So, Josh, anything you'd like to wrap up and say?
No, that was great.
It was.
I'm actually really surprised. Like, you pulled that book out and was like, oh boy. But then there was so many actual, like, useful things in that first chapter. So
a lot of interesting details.
Yeah.
So very cool. Miracle Canine's winter merch line is available now.
Look at that.
We got these beanie caps. A lot of people ask for them every year when I'm wearing it. These are available on our website right now, miraclecanine.com/shop.
Ooh.
Purchase one up. Get yourself a nice flannel. Get yourself a nice sweatshirt. Huh? We got all kinds of stuff.
Dang. Expanding the line.
That's it. But obviously, until next time.
Yeah.
It was good.
It was. It was a good one.
All right, Josh. Where are they going to find you?
And they're going to find me not at Josh DeBay Productions right now, .com, because it's down. Because
when's it going to be done?
Hopefully the end of this. Oh boy. Hopefully by the end of this week. But I got a lot of editing to do before I go to Florida, so we'll see. Otherwise, just find me on Instagram. Instagram at Josh DeBay Productions.
Hit us at Miracle Canine Training or David the Dog Trainer and miraclecaninetraining.com/shop if you want to buy stuff.
Yes.
All right, guys. We'll see you in 2 days.
Bye.